Hey guys, and welcome to my video on basically my impressions and thoughts on the Lahn's Awakening after the first week of gameplay. So, the Lahn's Awakening is a really fun awakening. It fixes a lot of the core issues that I personally felt Lahn had in her pre-awakening, namely the long CDs, the lack of mobility, and the somewhat lacking AoE capabilities once your main AoE abilities in Salpuri Purge and Blooming Netherflower were down. It also gives her more access to sort of flowing between her skills, and it really just feels amazing in general. Now, one small criticism I have is that her awakening does not need to use her pre-awakening very much at all. You still have the core mobility skills, such as, so if I switch to awakening here, you do still get, of course, the Nimbus Stride, which is obviously one of the best parts about Lahn. But you don't really need to use anything apart from Salpuri Purge and occasionally Cymbidium or Sacred Dance. There's not too much else to use from her pre-awakened form that I've personally found to be super useful. So, the Lahn's Awakening is very fun to play. The animations are incredible, and quite honestly, it's probably the most fun I've had with an Awakened form in a long time. The Lahn's Awakening is the Glaives, the Crimson Glaives. The Crimson Glaives are a pair of dual-wielded swords with chains on them. So you can see the chains if I zoom in here. They're kind of attached up here to her, sort of her upper arm. And she uses them in a variety of ways. Her auto attack has her just swinging them directly in front of her. She can use them to kind of throw them. That was her right mouse button, as you can see. Then she also has a number of fast attacks. She has a kick attack, where she puts the glaive down and then spins around it, which is a really cool attack. It's very spammable. Not very powerful, though, but it is very good for knocking people down. So just do that, and that soldier gets knocked down. She also gets a fairly long-range grab ability, which is great to use. She gets really cool animations, for example, Tailspin here, as well as Furor, which are both her shift abilities on LMB and RMB. Both feel great to use. Her backwards RMB, I'd have to actually look up the name for that one. That is one of my favorite abilities, but I can never remember the name. Bridled Despair is a really cool looking ability where she throws both of them out in front of her. And then she's got a few cool combos that look amazing too. So you've got that was one of her more core combos. I did add in a Bridal Despair that wasn't necessary though. But as you can see, the Lahn's core animations in Awakened just look incredible. Even her less useful skills, such as backwards LMB, have great animations on them and look great. So, the Lahn's core gameplay in PvE is mostly just spamming Shift RMB or Shift LMB. Now, there are two key buffs you'll want to use here. So you can see I've got a few buffs from my skill add-ons, but I'll let those fade away first. So, the Lahn's RMB actually gives her some pretty nice buffs, even if it doesn't hit anything. It gives her attack speed plus 10%. And then if you use forward RMB, Taunting Death, that gives her all AP plus 8. So you kind of want to use these in packs. And then there's an add-on for RMB, which is called Flailing Blades, which also allows it to increase damage against monsters by a significant amount, which makes PvE a breeze as long as you're using it. There's also, if you use it, you kind of drag yourself to them, and then if you just hold RMB while doing it, you'll automatically go into Tailspin, which is normally her shift RMB. So you can just kind of use it to get into a monster pack if this guy resets. Its range isn't super long. It's decently long compared to most other classes, but oh, I think I'm bugged out there because I think the range is just a little. Yeah, so the range is about here. Not super long, especially because Lahn in her awakened form gains dashes. Some very nice dashes too. Her side dash can be spammed pretty much continuously, as long as you have stamina for it. Her forward dash, however, has a cooldown, and it cannot be used off cooldown. And then the side dash, if you use her Shift E, which is her self buff that, gives her tons of stuff, can actually be spammed without stamina use. Which is, it just looks really funny to do this. But that's a neat little interaction. A lot of people don't realize her Shift E does. It also gives her a ton of resistances. Her Shift E is basically resist central. It's, all resistance plus 30%, movement speed plus 30%, and attack speed plus 20%. And also, any of her abilities that generally use stamina, so Nimbus Stride, her movement abilities, Eye of the Phoenix, and Eradication or Taunting Death, it won't consume stamina, which is pretty big because stamina costs can really hurt certain classes in combat, and allowing her to ignore them while in her Annihilator state is great. Now, the Lahn's Awakening, it is super edgy in terms of the names. Like, oh my god. Annihilator, Blood Moon Twist, Soul Raid, Earthly Pain, Taunting Death, Fearer. Tailspin's kind of out of place. Deadly Dance, Flailing Blades, Bloody Stride, Eradication, Phantom Dance, Mangler, Bridled Despair, Bleeding Hearts, Dancing with Death, and the one I haven't unlocked yet, which is Vice. And then, of course, you just have Tailspin, which is kind of out of place. So, the key combos I've found so far are in PvE content. Make sure to keep up your buff from Taunting Death, and then just use Tailspin and Fear off cooldown. And whenever it's up, once you hit 58, whenever it's up, use your LMB RMB. And then you want to keep holding it to go immediately into the other flow, because Bleeding Hearts isn't a flow, it's actually a skill that can be used kind of as a flow after Bridled Despair or Flailing Blades, and then you can immediately go into the flow for Mangler, which is a flow from two separate skills. It's the flow for Taunting Death, so this, and then it goes into Mangler, and it's also the flow for Bleeding Hearts. So just wait for Mangler to come back up. It's got a decently long cooldown. And in both cases, it's pretty powerful. So, you mainly in PvE, just keep up your buffs. And actually, you can cancel out of Taunting Death quite a few ways. The easiest way is just a quick side dash. But you can also just hold sideways and it will cancel out about halfway through. You don't need to go through the full animation. And if you really want to, you can actually instantly cancel into Mangler. You don't need to wait for the full animation to go out. So if you want the most damage possible without having put points into Taunting Death yet, you can just go into Mangler. If you want the most damage possible, then wait till the end of Taunting Death and then go into Mangler. So for PvE, make sure to keep up your buffs. Tailspin and Fear should be enough to kill most things that you're fighting. If you are in a slightly harder zone, or if things aren't dying to a single Tailspin or Fear combo, then simply start using Bridled Despair, use Bleeding Hearts, and of course your best skill, which you probably just want to use through most packs as long as it's up, Deadly Dance. Deadly Dance is probably one of the Lahn's strongest skills. Huge AoE, great movement, will hit most things. You can use it right here and you'll hit both of these. It's got quite a few levels in it. I'm about to get the second level. I took some skill points out of some other stuff and then accidentally put skill points back into Earthly Pain, which was a mistake. But I should have the second point in it pretty soon. And it's an amazing ability. It recovers your willpower, it recovers HP, it inflicts floating, it's got an air smash on it. It's one of Lahn's best abilities, both PvE and PvP. There you can see the floating applied. For PvP, there's a few different combos. PvE is fairly faithful for Lahn. You just kind of dash between packs, use Deadly Dance, make sure to keep up your buffs, Tailspin and Fear, Bleeding Hearts. Oh, is it not up? There we are. And if needed to finish something off, Bridled Despair. You don't need to use Earthly Pain. you don't really need to use Taunting Death for anything other than getting that buff off. Although I have found it useful in some very tightly clustered packs. If you've already used Bleeding Hearts, you've already used your Deadly Dance, then for tightly clustered packs, just using Taunting Death into Mangler will usually clear out the entire pack. It's got a deceptively long range. So if I just wait for it to come back up, you can see that I'm hitting him even though he's probably about 2 or 3 body lengths away from me. And it will still hit from just over here. So Lahn's abilities, they all have pretty good range. Taunting Death's no exception. It's not amazing, but it's more than you think and can clear tightly clustered packs fairly well. So for PvP combos, they're fairly straightforward. For the most part, you're using the grab. That would be Lahn's grab right there. You can pretty much cancel it after after the grab hits. Unfortunately, it is on an 11-second cooldown, so the grab is Soul Raid, and there's no way to reduce that cooldown. That's just what the cooldown is. So that is pretty much the core of every combo you're going to use. Pretty much every combo that the Lahn uses with her grab starts off with the grab. Usually you'll throw something else in, then it goes into Deadly Dance, and then into Bleeding Hearts, into the flow for Mangler. However, there are a few other combos that don't use that specific rotation, and most of the combos will throw something in before the Deadly Dance. So my personal favorites are Tailspin, Deadly Dance, Bleeding Hearts into Mangler. That is one of my 2 personal favorites. Very powerful. Normally you want to throw in the flow for Tailspin, which is Vice, but I'm not 59 yet. That'll be in a couple days. And that'll be when my actual Lahn guide comes out, where I go more in depth about the combos themselves. But for now, my 2 favorite combos are that one. So Tailspin, Deadly Dance, Bleeding Hearts, Flow Mangler. And then the other one, which is pretty similar, is grab. And actually, I messed up there. I did not use the Deadly Dance. But basically, all it does is it substitutes the Tailspin for Bridal Despair. So grab. And those are pretty much her most simple Awaken combos. Pretty much all her Awaken combos for PvP rely on her landing a grab. The Lahn's grab is one of the best grabs in the game. Huge range. Very generous hitbox. She's decently mobile. Like, she's not super mobile, but because her side dashes are spammable as long as you have stamina, that you can avoid things fairly well and sort of dash around into various attacks. Now, actually, that was one of her other combos that I use. So I might as well show that combo as well. So you go grab, and you start off with Bleeding Hearts, then you go into the Deadly Dance, and then you finish with Bridal Despair. You can add a few other things in there as well. I usually like to, right after the Bridal Despair, add Fear into its flow, which I believe the flow, what is the flow for Fear called? Dancing with Death, right. But most of her combos, they start with grab, and then you go into one of her normal crowd controls. You throw in another crowd control skill while the 1 second between crowd controls is still expiring, so it won't apply. As they're getting up, you hit them with the Deadly Dance for the floating into Air Smash. And then normally you finish it off with Bleeding Hearts into Mangler. And this will kill most enemies. Like, as long as you have enough AP, most enemies are not going to survive this. So I believe this is just out of the range for the grab. Yeah, just out of the range. The range for the grab, it's about 7 Lahns, I believe. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I can probably hit from about here. Yeah. So, Lahn, I'm loving her awakening. The grab is amazing. It is a little annoying that most of her awakening combos do require grab to hit. You can obviously just truncate the combo. If your grab is down, say you missed the grab, and as you can see there, very generous hitbox for the grab. Like, it is absolutely insane how generous it is. But if you miss the grab, so the grab's on cooldown, then most of the combos you can just kind of resume from the middle of the combo. Bridal Despair, for example, has a stun on it. And you just murder them from there. Like, you don't need to hit the grab. The grab is just your most reliable and powerful initiation. I'd say your most powerful secondary initiation is actually probably Deadly Dance. It's got a huge range on it, which means applying the floating is pretty easy. And Furor is actually one of the best in-combo abilities. You don't want to use it to catch someone out, but Furor actually has a down smash on it. So using Furor to basically, once you've gotten them in midair, so either through Tailspin, Deadly Dance, or any other number, even, for example, just the grab itself, you can then feel free to use Furor, but I don't like initiating with Furor. I prefer to use it as part of the combo itself. So one more time, here's one for basic combos. And as a level 56 Lahn, you won't have access to the flow for Mangler, the flow for Furor. You won't have access to Bleeding Hearts. You'll be missing quite a bit, but you will still be able to do a fairly basic version of the combo, which is you grab them. Okay. Grab them. You can do a Tailspin, Deadly Dance, and finish the Bridal Despair. That is probably the best you can do at 56, because at 56 you're missing a lot of your tools. And I would definitely recommend getting at least to 57, 58. I tried quite a few duels on my Lahn at 56 and 57. She feels way better at 58 with her flows. She's definitely one of the classes that needs her flows to really succeed, as her flows apply quite a lot of damage and give her a lot of power. And Bleeding Hearts especially, while not a flow, is one of the most powerful sort of one skill level skills I've ever used on any class. Dark Knight has a few very powerful ones. Musa, not really, but Bleeding Hearts is probably one of my favorite one skill point abilities that I've ever used. It is absolutely amazing to use, feels great, and does so much damage too. So you will, however, as Lahn, trust me, as you start to duel, as you start to fight more players, you will start to realize that her reliance on grab, it's not a negative. The grab is very powerful. It's just when you mess up the grab, or if the grab gets resisted, or any number of reasons, you're going to realize that the Lahn, she needs that grab. Anyways, guys, Lahn Awakening, I'm loving it so far. I'll be coming out with an actual guide for it in a couple of days once I hit 59 and unlock her final flow. I'll be doing probably the same type of guide as for the Dark Knight and the Musa. Similar to here, just getting right down to the combos. I won't be giving you guys all my thoughts on it. It'll just mostly be combos, why you use the combos, her add-ons, and the magic crystals you should use. Anyways, guys, that is my first impressions and thoughts on the Lahn's Awakening after 1 week of playing with it. I am in love with Lahn's Awakening. I've totally transitioned to being Lahn main. I have all her boss weapons, even if my Zarka is at 2 durability pry right now. And yeah, the Lahn's Awakening definitely helps redeem her a lot as a class. She was fun as hell without the Awakening, but with the Awakening, she's amazing. Oh, and I suppose I should quickly cover how to get in and out of pre-awakening and awakening. So, to get into awakening, the easiest way that I found, any of your dashes that are not a backwards dash. Backwards dash is a pre-awaken move, which means, while it can be used in awakening and won't transition you, using it in pre-awakening won't transition you. But if you go with a left or right dash, or a forward dash, you will transition immediately into the awakening. In awakening though, a backwards dash, you will stay in awakening. Then, in pre-awakening, the next best way, if you don't want to use a dash, is her backwards RMB. Backwards RMB, very nice, quick, easy, just gets you right into awakening again using Bridal Despair. One of my favorite ways to do it and get good damage off, especially if I was in awakening. And my favorite way to switch back to pre-awakening is the Hotbard Sulphury Purge. So you just Sulphury Purge. And that's actually a pretty powerful combo and one of my other favorite PvP openers on people. If I can catch them in a Sulphury Purge, then generally you'll get the floating off. You can then go into Bridal Despair to get back into Awakening. And then from there, continue your normal combo. So I like the Bridal Despair combo where it starts off from Bridal Despair. So grab Bridal Despair, Deadly Dance into Bleeding Hearts and Mangler. So catch. Very powerful combo, very useful in PvP and in PvE too to give you extra damage. Unfortunately, the absolute for Sulphury Purge is not available until level 60, so you will need to do some grinding if you want to be using it with basically its true potential. And then there's a few other ways. For example, I believe Cymbidium, which is backwards F. Yep, will switch you. But forwards F does not. And also, key to note, if you want to switch using Bridal Despair, you're going to want to lock Wind Orchid, I believe? Wind Orchid? Yeah, Wind Orchid. You're going to want to lock Wind Orchid because otherwise, if you don't keep it locked, it will first use Wind Orchid and then use Bridal Despair, which is not actually what you want to be doing. So keeping it locked lets you simply use Bridal Despair to get right back into the Awakening. Anyways, guys, that is my impressions on the Lahn's Awakening after 1 week. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope it was helpful to you. Definitely comment below if you found any cool combos of the Lahn that you personally like. What's your favorite animation of the Lahn? Like, personally, I am absolutely in love with Bleeding Hearts, but Tailspin, especially that second slash, has got to be one of my all-time favorite animations in the game, not just for Lahn. So let me know your thoughts on the Awakened Lahn. Is she good? Is she bad? Is she everything you've ever dreamed of? Comment below, and yeah, have a good one, guys.